Hi everyone, it's Ileana and I have a little bit of a long video for you today. I am on a quest to use up as much of my pattern paper as I can. I have a lot of 6x6 paper pads and I don't really want to buy any more until I've used up some of my stash. So today I'm going to be showing you all the different things I made from my paper pad. Once again, I'm using an older paper pad. This is still the Let's Bokeh from Fawn, but it's a kind of a subtle pattern, and so you could use anything that you have. It's just a stripe pattern. I am going to center my Concord and 9th Snow Flurries die, and I'm just going to pull it off of my die, and I'm just going to put all the little pieces inside this little bowl. I have a lot of these little bowls on my desk just to catch spare pieces. I have cut down a piece of cardstock, and it is a full sheet that I cut down to 5.5 by 11, and then I just scored it down the middle to make this square card. I've mounted it into my MISTI, and now I'm going to take that large snowflake from the Snow Flurries die, also from Concord and 9th, and I'm just positioning that in the middle of my die. That way I could just stamp it all out. I'm using some Delicata silver embossing ink. You can use any kind of embossing ink because the silver embossing powder will cover up whatever ink you're using. I just wanted to make sure that it was centered, and so now I'm going to go directly onto my cardstock. I did prep it with my embossing tool just simply because the glitter embossing powder I'm going to be using does have glitter in it, and glitter usually just sticks to everywhere you don't want it to stick. Now, I don't have a container for every single one of my embossing powders, and so I'm just going to use a piece of scrap paper to catch it. And so I am just going to pour this Wow Metallic Silver Sparkle embossing powder onto my cardstock, and now I'm just going to heat set it. It is a beautiful sparkling embossing powder, and I just absolutely love it. Now I'm just going to test this out and to make sure that it is correct, and I am going to mark it so that I know which side is up, just because it may not be the exact same centered on the pattern paper, so I'm just going to mark it with a little pencil. That way I know which side is up. I'm going to spray my cardstock or my pattern paper with some spray adhesive, just because I don't want those little bitty pieces of the snowflake to get caught in the envelope. And so I'm just spraying it down, and I'm adding a piece of acetate. Now the acetate is smaller than my pattern paper, so I'm just going to remove any sticky that is still on the pattern paper that got sprayed. And now I can start creating my shaker card. I'm just double checking to make sure everything is okay. Now I'm taking some 3M foam and I'm doubling it up so that I have a nice thickness for my shaker card. So I'm going to just cut little strips down just so that I know, just so that I can place it and create a place for all of the elements to go. Now around the edges of my shaker, I'm just taking this EK Success embossing tool and just removing any sticky, just so the seed beads and the sequins don't stick to it. I'm not sure what brand of seed beads these are. It was just in a container, and for some reason it wasn't labeled, but it just had some clear silver and marshmallow seed beads with a few iridescent. And I did add some of these Martha Stewart sequins that I had. I purchased them from Michael's a long time ago. Now I did cover up my arrow, so I have no idea where it is. So now I'm trying to turn this so that I know that it's going to be centered. And when I figure it out, I'm just going to leave it that side up when I add my score tape. I did use score tape just so that I was able to get a good bond between the slick surface of the acetate. I did put acetate on the back side just because I didn't know how else I was going to put it on the front of my card base. Now I have it adhered and I want to add a sentiment to it, but I don't want the sentiment to go across the middle because I want the snowflake and the shaker elements to be the focal point of my card. And so I'm going to use a banner, and it did take me a while to figure out what banner I wanted to use or what sentiment, and I finally decided to use the Lawn Fawn Everyday Sentiment banners. There are 2 sets, and I just put them all together in one envelope. I'm going to run the banner through my Altenew Mini Blossoms die cutting machine, and I'm going to do several at a time because I did do several cards. Now to center my sentiment, and I'm using a sentiment from Simon Says Stamp Holiday Message Strips. I'm just going to mount that onto my MISTI, and I'm going to use this VersaFine Clair ink, and the ink is Morning Mist, so it's a gray. I'm going to use the negative from my die cutter just to center the sentiment inside that space. And then I'm just going to drop in my banner. And this way you can do a lot of sentiments really fast just by dropping them in there. I am going to add that same silver embossing powder onto my sentiment strip, and then I'm going to trim it again using my die cutter. Now I could have centered my sentiment, but it was going to be too long for my card, and I wanted my strip to be a little bit shorter on both sides. So I'm just going to pop that sentiment right back into this die, and you can feel when the top and bottom are in there, and I'm just going to add a little piece of this purple tape just to hold it in place, and I'm going to run it through my die cutter again, and then I have the perfect length banner. And now I'm just going to adhere the sentiment to the bottom of my card with some foam adhesive, and you can see why I didn't want the banner to be too long. Now for my next card, I'm going to be using the Gina K Sentimental Holidays, and I'm first going to start by stamping the inside of my card. I have the sentiment mounted inside my mini MISTI, and I am using a top folding card. As you can see, the top is hanging out of the mini MISTI, and it is not going to be an issue to stamp. So I'm going to stamp the inside of my sentiments all at once, and you want to make sure that the fold will go the correct way. So I like my valley when I score my cardstock to be on the outside. Now I did pull out this very old Cuttlebug embossing folder. It has snowflakes on it, and so I used my Gina K layering cardstock and I ran it through with that embossing folder, and now I'm just going to add it to the front of my cards. I've cut out some circles with my Hero Arts Infinity dies, and I used vellum because I wanted it to be a little bit sheer and you could still see everything behind it. And so I just smeared some Versamark on the edges, and I used this Judikins Diamond Sparkle embossing powder. Now for my sentiment, I did cut out the word joy from an Ellen Hutson die set, and I did several of each one with white, and then I did one with some Concord and 9th silver glitter paper. And I'm using this liquid adhesive just to stack all my pieces together so that it has a little bit of dimension. Now to hold my pieces together, I'm just going to use the back of my mini MISTI with a bar magnet, and it'll hold those in place until all the liquid adhesive dries. And you could even use your creative corners to hold your pieces together. Now I'm going to start assembling everything, and I want to hide my adhesive so that you don't see it through the vellum. So I'm first going to start by centering the snowflake onto the round piece. And once again, I'm going to use my magnets and the back of my MISTI to hold my pieces together. I'm going to go ahead and do that with all of the pieces, and then once I have that, I'm going to figure out where it's going to go, And I'm going to add the Joy die cut. I'm going to do the best that I can to center everything together just because I don't want the snowflake to be crooked and I don't want the word joy to be crooked. So I'm just going to hold it all together with the back of my MISTI. Once it's all dry, I'm going to add a little bit of foam to the back of the snowflake, just on the ends, just to give it a little bit of dimension. And then I'll add some liquid adhesive to where it's going to be hidden. Once again, I'm going to use the back of my MISTI to hold all my pieces together while they dry. So here is a quick look at all of the cards I made. I made a few shaker cards. I made as many as I could until I ran out of acetate and seed beads. And then I went on to do just a flat card where I just adhered the pattern paper to the front of the panel. I did add some Studio Katia silver gems. For one of them, I did do clear drops, but I didn't really like it as much, and so I found the silver gems or jewels. And for these cards, I used the Concord in 9th silver glitter paper from their Neutrals pack. For these cards, I used the Lawn Fawn Knit Picky pattern paper that came out last year. In all, I believe I got 26 cards done, and I even went back and used the inside snowflake to make these tags. The tag is from Neat and Tangles, Classic Tag 1. The sentiment that I just showed you was from an Older Hero Arts Holiday Sayings. The sentiment from this one comes from the Concord and 9th Very Merry Sentiment set. And the back of all of the tags is stamped with the Concord and 9th Holiday Cheer Tag stamp set. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed this video where I try to use up as much of my older pattern paper as possible. There is so much new stuff coming out that I wanted to go ahead and make some room for the new stuff. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Be sure to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And I hope you have a great day. Bye.